Welcome to Just Asia, AHRC TV's weekly human rights program. These are the headlines. Dalit girl loses eye after brutal attack and rape in Nepal. India's top court calls for Hadiya to be heard. Police in Nepal use excessive force against protesters of child death. Cambodian NGOs call for new Paris peace conference due to deteriorating human rights situation. Bangladesh plans voluntary sterilization for Rohingya refugees. 3 years on, no prosecution in Panyai attack, Indonesia. 3 urgent appeals from Sri Lanka and Nepal. Welcome to AHRC TV's Just Asia. I'm Annie Lin. This week, Just Asia begins with Nepal, where a 14-year-old Dalit girl has been raped by a 19-year-old youth. After raping the girl on October 28th, the non-Dalit Santosh Shrestha tried to kill her by slashing her with a sickle and gouging out her left eye. When the girl became unconscious, Santosh fled, thinking that she was dead. When the girl was brought to the Dharan-based BP Kerala Institute of Health Sciences for examination and treatment, the doctors became suspicious. They asked her to give them some details. After insisting for some time, the girl relented and told them she had been raped, giving them particulars about the incident. Due to the delay of 1 day before receiving treatment, the girl lost her left eye. After the police were informed, Santosh has been arrested and brought to Bhojpur for investigation and interrogation. India's Supreme Court has directed police in the state of Kerala to present Hadiya in a court on November 27. Hadiya, previously known as Akhila Ashokan, adopted the Islamic faith and married a Muslim man, Shavin Jahan, in December 2016. Her father then petitioned the Kerala High Court, alleging that his daughter had been forcibly converted and was being held against her will. She has been confined to her father's house in Kottayam since May 2017, when the Kerala High Court annulled her marriage. The court called it a sham marriage for the purpose of taking her out of the country. The Supreme Court on Monday said that consent of an adult for marriage is prime. Denied the right to be heard by parents, her community, and even Kerala High Court, the Supreme Court's directions to find out what Hadiya thinks are welcomed by women's rights activists. On August 16, the Supreme Court had ordered a probe by the country's anti-terror agency into whether the marriage was part of a love jihad conspiracy or whether Hadiya converted to Islam of her own free will. Meanwhile, the Kerala Women's Commission and other activists have asked for a police probe into Hadiya's present living conditions amidst concerns about how her parents are treating her. Next, police in Nepal have used excessive force on protesters protesting at the lack of investigation in the death of an 11-year-old child, Laxman Shivakoti. Laxman was found dead in a pool of floodwater on 1 October 2017 after he went to his neighbor Suresh Pagarel's house on September 30th. Laxman's family has filed a complaint with the police, citing the hand of the Pagarel's family in his death. The protesters accused Deputy Superintendent of Police Raj Kumar Sewell of not properly addressing the concerns of the victim's family and villagers, and of being in collusion with the family of those suspected of the murder. Soon after the locals began protesting on October 27th, police resorted to indiscriminate baton charges. The agitators then started pelting stones to protest police excess. The police fired hundreds of rounds of rubber bullets and lobbed more than 80 rounds of tear gas shells. The police also fired on protesters without providing clear warning, killing Naresh Thapa and Dev Bahadur Chaudhary. 2 other protesters are in serious condition, and dozens more have received bullet injuries and are receiving medical treatment. Available YouTube videos clearly show that the police used excessive force, including pelting stones back at the protesters. In Cambodia, a group of 55 NGOs published a letter last week calling for a new Paris peace conference because of severe deterioration in the state of human rights and democracy in Cambodia. The letter was released on the 26th anniversary of the Paris Peace Agreements that ended conflict in the country, permitting the United Nations to control Cambodia's government while the country created a system of democratic elections. The letter noted that countries that signed the accord are required to consult with members if the agreements are not being upheld. Last month, Cambodian police arrested opposition leader Kem Sokha, charging him with treason. Critics say the arrest shows Prime Minister Hun Sen strengthening his attacks on political opponents as the country prepares for a national election next July. Hun Sen has threatened to shut down the opposition and give its seats in parliament and its common council positions to parties that support the government. Since August, the government has suspended the operations of 20 radio stations that broadcast reports and programs by U.S. broadcasters Radio Free Asia and Voice of America. It also forced the English-language Cambodia daily newspaper to shut down. In the letter, the 55 NGOs said that unless things change, the vote next year has no chance of legitimacy. Meanwhile, Hun Sen has dismissed suggestions that his government had violated the peace accords. Next, Bangladesh is planning to introduce voluntary sterilization of Rohingya refugees, nearly 1 million of whom have been staying in overcrowded camps in Cox's Bazar district near the Burma border. According to the head of the Family Planning Service in Cox's Bazar, there was little awareness of birth control among the Rohingya. Large families were the norm in the camps, where some parents had up to 19 children. More than 600,000 Rohingya have been forced to seek shelter in Bangladesh after their homes and properties in Burma were destroyed in arson attacks over the past months. The latest arrivals have joined hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees who fled in earlier waves from Burma's Rakhine state, where the Muslim minority has endured decades of persecution. Bangladesh has for years run a successful domestic sterilization program, offering $28 and a traditional lungi garment to each man who agrees to undergo the procedure. Every month, 250 people undergo sterilization in the border town of Cox's Bazar. But performing the permanent procedure on non-Bangladeshi nationals requires final approval from a committee headed by the health minister. Moving to Indonesia, after nearly 3 years of the brutal Panyai attack on 8 December 2014, no one has yet been prosecuted. While President Widodo had stated on 28 December 2014 that "I want this case resolved as quickly as possible so it does not reoccur in the future," the president has since done nothing. 4 indigenous Papuan children were shot dead, 2 adults seriously injured, and 17 others injured in the brutal attack by security forces at Carol Gobai Field, Panyai, Papua Province. Even though the National Commission on Human Rights established an ad hoc pro-justicia investigation team, up until present, there's no clear investigation result. Apart from the Panyai case, President Widodo has done little in his 3 years of office to resolve other human rights cases in Papua and Indonesia. Finally, the Urgent Appeals Weekly features 3 cases from Sri Lanka and Nepal. In Sri Lanka, a man was grievously assaulted by 4 men on October 5. Despite medical treatment, Nuan Chamara Pereira succumbed to his injuries on October 22, when Nuan's family attempted to lodge a complaint with the Moratua Madara police post. The officer in charge, annulled, Sub-Inspector Sampath, and Police Constable Sanadera sabotaged the investigation, as a result of which the 4 men were released. In another case from Sri Lanka, police used excessive force against peaceful protesters on October 10th. The protest was organized by the People's Wall against Private Medical College Saitam, demanding legally acceptable rights in a peaceful manner. Lastly, in a case from Nepal, a woman was viciously beaten by her father-in-law, Ram Sewak Mahara, while her husband stood silently by. Shaba sustained life-threatening serious injuries to her head, face, eyes, and different parts of her body. That is all for this episode of Just Asia. For more on these and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia or www.ahrc.asia/justasia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.